Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Allegory and Silk podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Fireproof Greens. Fireproof Greens is the only nutritional health supplement that is proof of fire. It cannot be caught on fire. Why is that a product? I have no idea. Anyways, we are super excited to welcome our guest. He's a very humble man. He's done a lot for humanity. His name is Kevin Shea. A quick run through of some of the things he's done. He was a New York City firefighter. He is a survivor of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. He works with O-Parks, which is a project that deals with conservation, wildlife conservation in Nicaragua. He is also the owner of a residential dome house, the largest dome house in America, which is this large dome. We'll put a picture on the screen so you guys can see it. Welcome to our show, Kevin. It's very nice to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be here.
Your duties as a firefighter, we'll talk about that. When did you start? Yeah, I know your dad was a firefighter.
My grandfather was a firefighter, he became a chief. My father was a firefighter, he became a lieutenant. My brother Brian was on the job. My uncle was on the job. I was a third generation firefighter. And I technically didn't want the job at the time. I took the test.
Yeah.
Right. And then 9 years later, they called me. So I was already in another career. I finished up my graduate school, graduate studies. Yeah. It was working for a software company called Greentree. They called me the beta tester. Okay. So I'd be the guy that tested the tools and helped develop some of the FAQs because sometimes people have a problem with it. And then I did sales. I started doing really well for myself, but then I got that call from the fire department. Yes.
Now, so how the heck, let's go a little bit deeper into the context here. How did you go from software development specifically to firefighting?
Believe it or not, it was a small leap, and I have to actually be grateful and thankful for my brother because he was on the job for about, I think, 10 years at the time.
That's my brother, god damn it!
Firefighters at the time, especially what we used to call dinosaurs, there's the guys that were the old school guys that were on the job for a long time. They were down there when there was the King Riots fires, and when a mayor had said if your house gets burned or your apartment gets burned down, you go into the top of a list of these rent-controlled homes. People would actually start fires, so they'd be on the front of the list.
Oh.
So there were a lot of fires they had to go through, and the unions were getting stronger, but not as strong as they started to get later on. But then I actually went into the fire department. There was like a few phases I had to go through. The first day you get in, I already remember the day, it was February 16th, 2000, because we got appointed, actually 1999, we got appointed February 16, 1999. I was in there, and we had a guy where all the just picture this, you're in a room with like 200 guys, 200 probationary officers, firefighters, and they're all sitting in there, and they're giving you the first speech, and they got one of the biggest buffs, fire buffs. He is a firefighter, but he was also a Marine, and he was as big as you. Okay?
Probably bigger.
And he must have done push-ups right before it. And his face was all red. And he comes on the stage. I'm not going to curse. All right?
You can.
Oh, I can. Okay.
Yeah.
He says, he gets on the stage and he's all like speaking from his lungs. And he says, they call the fire department a semi-military unit? That's bullshit. It's paramilitary. Now get your fucking ass outside and line up. And so we all ran. Well, we had suits on. We had like these little zoot suits because we were trying to look good and professional. Yeah. We had to run out, scuff through 200 people out through a narrow doorway to go outside where he told us what it is, and we had to do push-ups. And he said, this is the way of the life of a firefighter. Now, they were doing all this, if you look behind him, there were people there saying, we need to make sure that we have good firemen on the job. They were really disappointed with the last class that went in. So they said, let's bring in the tough ones to make sure that people are working as a unit. We don't want lazy guys. We need people that we can count on holding the hose. Could you imagine if you are on the hose, but the guy behind you is afraid of fire or doesn't feel like doing the most and that's not holding the hose, and you're losing that line, and then the fire's looking at you. So they wanted to make sure they had good, well-trained guys. So I said, Brian, I'm not sure if this is the job for me. I went back to my other job and says, I'm supposed to show up again tomorrow, but they were yelling at me, and I'm scared. I think I'm not going to do well at this job. And he says, take a deep breath and relax. They're going to do this to you because they're trying to brainwash you for the next 2 weeks until they're ready for you to work as a team. Because you're okay, but there are other guys there that are lazy, they have a term from them, they call them square rooters. I can explain that to you. But people who are out for themselves, all right? And other people who just got in the job because their father's in the job, but they really don't really want to be on the job. And people who, we actually had a guy that was holding the line, but as soon as he was in a fire, he fainted. He's just
so guys who have the best intentions, but it's just not made for them.
They could be that way, and sometimes they're doing it as like a challenge for them. But then they find out, I don't really want that job. I'd rather work at the bakery. We had a guy who was a baker, decided to do that as a challenge, and they said, not my cup of tea. You know, I could have said no and gone back to software, and I could have made money. But I'll tell you what, after my brother Brian gave me that little talk to. I said, oh my God, it's like I'm acting, you know? Wow. So I just had to pretend, and I was already excited about what we're going to be doing. It was physical, and I was physical, like you guys are physical. Yeah. And I like the idea of being able to work together with people, because when you're in the work field, you don't always feel that way. Sometimes you feel someone's going to stab you in the back. Sometimes you feel you're just being exploited. But in the fire department, you were all equal.
You had camaraderie.
What's that? It's a big camaraderie, and that's why they call them the brothers. Even to this day, even if they probably call the woman a sister, because we do have more women on the job, especially after 9/11. A lot of people jumped on after 9/11. But at that time, as soon as my brother gave me that little talk to, I just lighted up, said, oh my God, this is it. And I had a big smile on my face, even when they were yelling at me, even when I was standing and they said, stand out tall and do your special stand tall and salute. I was having a grand old time, to the point where it made some guys uncomfortable, because I'm having a good time. And they're thinking, was he a little bit, light in the shoes? You know what I mean? And they get a little nervous about that. Some people could be. But I got through that training just like that, and I was just waiting for it. And by the way, we're going to get to the dome, but I had already had my blueprints
since
for the
'93.
dome. Yeah. So, I mean, I got my first class of 200 guys that were there. They all got to hear about the plans for the house even early on.
Now, let's fast forward a little bit. What was the length of time you spent in the fire department? Let me ask you that.
1999, February 16th, and then I had to retire, I have to say. October 28th, 2004.
So how many years?
Okay. What's that? I want to say it's almost 5. Is that okay to say?
That sounds about
almost
right.
5. Yeah.
So in those 5 years, you obviously had that was a huge memorable part of your life. Right?
Oh, huge.
Yeah. What was the most impact that had on you? Just being there, forgetting the
incident at 11. Yeah. I have to say it was exciting, and it was a purposeful activity. That's what I liked about it. Mm-hmm. So now to these days, people want me to do some other things that were fun, and there's nothing wrong with having fun. Yeah. But for some reason, not to them, but I frown in it on side. I really like some surfing. People say, hey, you want to go surfing? I'm like, yeah, that is risk prone, but no real purpose for me. I don't feel it. But if someone said, let's go into a house fire and maybe rescue people, it feels purposeful.
Yeah.
When I did scuba diving down in Nicaragua, right? When they gave me a project that was worthwhile, like they said, Kev, we're going to be building artificial reefs, and you're going to help us build it. You're going to go down there, and you're going to be holding these concrete, what do they call those? Cinder blocks. Yeah. And you're going to build pyramids down there under the water, so then we can have lobsters growing in there. I'm like, I'm in. But if you say we're going to go to a shipwreck and just go around and view it, I wasn't that interested.
You want a purpose. You want a mission.
I always did. Yeah. You know what I mean? I still get a little hard on myself about it, but I'm getting a little more relaxed as I get older. Yeah.
Now, how long did it take you to feel comfortable being a firefighter? Was it a certain amount of months or a certain amount of years?
Never was.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because, you see, and we lost them on 9/11, a lot of them.
Right.
There were guys that were on the job for years, and it was their life and their family, and I was getting on. I was only a second grade firefighter. First grade is after 5 full years, fully active, right? Mm-hmm. So, but they had a special lingo. They talked to each other. They looked at you differently unless you had done enough years, because you had to prove yourself.
Yeah.
You see that on the job, how you get promotion. But there was no promotion in the fire department except one that says, you know what, I can trust you holding the hose for me. Mm-hmm. I can trust you to break through that roof and do ventilation so I'm not stuck in the heat.
Now, was it hard to hold that hose?
Yeah, one and a half you could do by yourself, but it's always good to have assistance, especially if it's charged, meaning it's filled with water, and you have to push it through the hole. Dragging is a problem.
Now they carry the hose behind you and hold it tight to make sure it doesn't fly around it every.
Right. Two and a half was different, or 2-inch was different. 2-inch, it was very difficult to hold because the nozzle constantly wanted to push up. I'm sorry about that. Wants to push up. So you better have 2 people on that one. And I'm not like you guys muscular. I was okay, and I was 150 pounds. So if there was a kick, even if you held it right, you'd be maybe lifted off the ground with a 2-inch, right?
Jeez. Now, what was the most daring rescue that you ever like performed as a firefighter? I saw one recently where it was a very risky rope rescue from like a multiple-story building. You've seen that before, right? Yeah. That's pretty daring, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't me. Sorry.
Okay.
I hope I'm not disappointing you because that disappointed me. I was in probie school and I saw that video. Kevin Shea.
The 12th floor of the building was ablaze. It was a recording studio and it was going up fast. 2 employees were trapped in windows on 2 different sides of the building. Barr now had the victim, but just barely. The men on the roof couldn't pull them back up, and the rope wasn't long enough to reach the ground. So Kevin Shea, who just lowered a man over the edge, now had to go over himself on a rope that he shouldn't even have been using. Kevin
Shea is his name. But Kevin Shea and we both had
our
own little fun stuff. But Kevin Shea, I already know him too. He was also in a rescue.
So same name, different guy?
Same name.
Okay.
And great guy, by the way.
Great man.
And a humble guy.
Yeah.
And full of energy. So first of all, you need to know, when you do it, they call it the life-saving rope for a reason.
Yeah.
Life-saving rope. In the life-saving rope, that's the rope you have to go down. You have to tie it onto... Oh, thank you, brother. So you have to tie it onto a substantial object that's on top of any building before you're going to go down to rescue something.
We only allowed to do this once. With 1 impact load, and we usually put this out of service. But the situation was we had to use it twice. 11 years ago, one of my best friends was killed when one of these ropes snapped.
Because the purpose is life-saving, right? So normally you have some guy help you get down below. But what was happening in that unique scenario that was in the papers was he was at the top, but there was no substantial object to tie the rope on so they can lower you down with the other brothers. So what do? 2 guys, kind of bulky guys, right? They held the rope. They positioned themselves on the ground, put their feet against the parapet, and they lowered him down with that.
Bro.
And a skyscraper building. And that was amazing. And they got him down. They got the person's body. Then Kevin went down to a lower window, broke it in the window, and they got in the building and it was done. All right? Kevin Shea was also at the 1993 bombing, just before you bring that on up. Mm-hmm. He was at the first bombing of the World Trade Center, and that's when he got seriously hurt, and then he was on light duty. But my story with him, which was hilarious, was after 9/11, I went to a fundraiser. Mm-hmm. Now, first, I'll tell you my first story was I was in probie school, and they showed a video of him going down, and all you could hear on the videotape was, and firefighter Kevin Shea is saving someone's life, and firefighter Kevin Shea, they're dying, the same thing you read, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm on the job. My grandfather was in the fire department, my father was in the fire department, my brother Brian's on the job, and I have the last name Shea, and I'm going, I already had big shoes to fill in. Yeah. And now I'm seeing this guy the same name, and they're all going to look at me going, yeah, but you have a lot to do before you could fill those shoes of that name. I'm like, oh, it hit. So, and then another story was when after 9/11, we went to our first fundraiser, and I was wearing my jacket that said Shea, and I was talking to some girl who ended up being my wife at the time, and she told the friends about it, and he says, that's not Kevin Shea. Because they didn't know much about me.
Yeah.
Right.
So they said, no, that's not Kevin Shea. So they actually confronted me and tried to get me. They thought he was a scam artist, that I was a scam artist trying to get money out of people. So
like stolen valor. Yeah.
What's that?
Like stolen valor.
Right.
Yeah.
So they first asked me a couple of questions, and he says, oh, so that rescue you did, that was great. And I said, no, man, I'm so sorry. And then they said, after me being humbled and telling the real story, he says, oh, all right, Sal, I'm sorry, Kevin. We thought you were some scam artist. That's my experience with him. Also, I met him in Rescue 2 at one point. It was really great to see him there. Rescue 1, sorry. The biggest event that happened to me, besides 9/11, was my first months on the job in the first firehouse, which is technically a slow firehouse. We did We got less runs. You don't normally get structural fires. It's in Howard Beach. It was mostly just brush fires we expected. But believe it or not, historically, they didn't get a lot. But we got 2 big fires. One was a house fire in what they called an Irish shanty town. It was a 1-story building. It was congested with a lot of stuff. They used to call it a collier's mansion when you have a lot of stuff in your house and it's tough to go around. But I told you before that engine usually never pulls people out of the fire. But that day, and only a few months on the job, we got the call. The ladder was delayed to the call. We got in. We dragged the hose over a fence, a metal fence. We got in the building. We were ready to go, but we had to do a search first before we shot water and hurt people with the hose or whatever. So we actually did a rescue of a woman who had got 75% of her body burned. We pulled her out, and then after we got the body out, it was back to go to engine job because by that time the ladder had came in.
She survived, right?
She survived. I didn't get to meet her because then she wanted to meet me at the firehouse in Howard Beach, and I wasn't there that day on tour. And I had another little special accolade, is that one other talent I had, remember I was a software developer, is that I was also pretty good with computers. And in 1999, 2000, the guys were just getting computers on the job. They had Windows 95 on the computer.
Yeah.
Some guys didn't even know how to turn the computer on.
Yeah.
Guy comes up to me and says, "You look like you're good at computers." I had brought a tablet almost all the time to work. You know, he says, "How about this? You write up the report for that fire." And I knew how to do reports. Now, I worked for Maryhaven, and when I was working at Maryhaven, I had to write reports. And you have to be you have to write in a certain way. It's about being observational, not judgmental. You don't have to lead. You don't want to lead and make assumptions. And because I had a good control of the language, got everyone a medal, which you normally don't get a medal for rescue for the engine. And I was like, I did this for them, and they were so happy in the firehouse for that. So that was something that was so memorable for me.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
That's great.
For other incidents, we went to quite a few other fires, and it was a lot of fun. But that one was one of the more memorable.
It was
ones.
fun, you just said?
What's that?
It was fun, you just said?
Well, we love. You know, it's funny.
You're a thrill seeker,
you have
right?
to defend yourself.
You're a thrill seeker,
9/11
right?
was another case too. I mean, I enjoy, and I want to assume that most of the other firefighter guys,
Adrenaline junkies?
they do. Yeah, there's adrenaline running through, and again, a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So we get to go in, get the job done, and then leave. We don't need all that other stuff that comes back. We don't need the accolades. We don't need the clapping. We just like to do that job. And it's not the easy job. It's a tough job, but and you don't have to be the neatest. You obviously don't have to wear shirt and tie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to do that stuff you would do in the office. You go in. You kind of make a mess. You're destroying walls, right, to get to the fire. You put the fire out. You get those senses coming through. You get that steam on your face.
Oh, yeah.
Right, the tingling if the fire is really hot. You get to see things you don't normally, that other people don't get to see, you know, unless you buy a ticket to a movie, like Backdraft or something, right? And even then, you don't get all the senses activated. And then you feel comfortable with the crew you're with, and then you leave with the crew. And then after that, you get to talk about it in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right? And you're alive.
Yeah.
Right?
Ever get burned doing the job?
What's that? Not yet.
Not yet?
No. Because I might go into the volunteers in a few years from now.
Okay.
You know, I'm still risk prone. I still do things like when I coated my roof on my house, which is high up there, and it was on a rope. And
How old are you now?
What's that? 57.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looking good.
Looking great.
Yeah. Have any kids?
No kids.
No
I
kids.
don't, but Versha does.
Okay.
My princess, Versha Gupta, she's my partner, and she already had the kids for many years. One's 31, the other one I believe is 24, princess? What? 27. And gotta say, wonderful kids. I can go on and on. If you have stories, I can tell you stories. But I love the kids. I don't see them because one's working at Microsoft, another one's a remote worker working for another software company. Wow. And it's really great. So, but I get to see them, and one's getting married in 2025. We're going to do a European trip for a few months. Yeah,
So, just to briefly touch on it.
Yes, sir.
Because this is part of the canon of the Kevin Shea story, okay?
A miraculous tale. Kevin Shea was a third-generation firefighter who had just finished his tour with FDNY Ladder 35 on the morning of September 11th when they got the call a plane had hit the World Trade Center.
2001. 9/11 terrorist attacks. Okay. You were actually off duty at that point. You saw a ladder of, I believe it was 12 men.
12 men get on. A couple of people also were off duty or they were detoured there.
Kevin Shea was the only member of Ladder 35 to survive.
He was found unconscious with a broken neck in the wreckage right before the North Tower fell.
I do want to know what that transition period was and what was the things that followed right after, because what had happened was, you could tell us the story of what happened first.
Yeah.
But if you want to tell us the transition and how that transitioned to the next part of your life.
Oh, okay. 9/12 you want to know about, right?
Yeah.
9/12, technically I wasn't even conscious enough because I was in the hospital, right, 9/11. I got out of the hospital on the 23rd of September. So I'm out. I'm conscious. I had been walking around trying to make sure that I stayed active. Because I do know that if you're hanging out in the hospital and you just stay in the bed and you're taking your Percocet, it's not a good thing. You get muscle atrophy and stuff. So even when I had a rotator cuff that was horrible, you know, the time when you walk around and you feel that strong ping. I don't know if you ever got hurt that bad. So I just said, but I have to keep on walking. I even had blue balls because they had operated on my testicles. I lost 90% of one and 10% of the other. But I said, I have to keep on moving forward. So I do a lot of walking in the hospital and then outside. My father took me home to a house in Setauket. I was living on Cornwallis Road at the time and was commuting into work. I was there. I was bored. But at the same time, really stressed out, heightened awareness of stuff. Also, any food I ate was very plain. That there's a reason why that happened, but it was very bored. I felt I was tasting cardboard.
What's the reason why?
It was an injury to when I got hit by either my tank, my SCBA tank, or debris from the building. You know, when I got blown for 200 feet, I'm hitting something, you know? Yeah. So it actually deadened a part of my nasal nerve, or I forgot what they call that nerve, but it's an olfactory nerve.
Yeah.
And luckily, that's the one nerve that actually repairs itself.
Wow.
I know that. Crazy. So after months, funny stories about that. I can get into it if you want to, but the funny stories about I would have weird smells. But that was it. That was one of the things I had to deal with, but I didn't know at the time. All I thought was, it's weird. I'm in the hospital for a couple of weeks. Next thing you know, all my cereal goes bad. I got to throw it out. You know?
Oh, man. So, no more Fruit Loops.
Right.
No more Frosted Flakes.
My father, who was a lieutenant, he decides he wants to watch, I think it's called The Brothers. It was about World War II. It was kind of like...
A Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
So he wants to see Band of Brothers. I'm there, and there were explosions going on in the show. Every explosion, I nearly leapt up. I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
I was that sensitive. So my father said, well, I'm going to continue watching it. So I said, all right, I got to go. So I ended up reading some yogi book or something like that. There was one other yogi, I can't remember his name, and I was reading that. But even then I was saying, I need to get out of here. I'm feeling very uncomfortable about being here. So I heard that there was going to be a funeral on Long Island. A lot of services and funerals. So I got to see a lot of the brothers there. And the other brother said, hey, I'm going to another funeral. But I'm going to another funeral. I want to go to that one. And after a couple that I went to, and some of them were on the same day, I said, you know what? I should, now that I feel like I'm a little bit better, I have a neck brace on me from my injuries, and I'm having difficulty walk. Why don't I at least go to visit my own firehouse? Yeah. So I went to my firehouse and I stayed at least a couple of nights there. But I'll tell you this, there was an experience there that I hope no one has to happen in there, in the firehouse. And it's to no blame, because this is an experience hardly anyone has to go through, right? 12 guys lost. The families don't know. No one knows where they are. Mm-hmm. They can't find them. Right. They don't even know what building they went at that time. In fact, when I was in the hospital, the brothers, they were surrounding me and says, Kev, I'm so glad you're alive. You were unaccounted for quite a while. We found out about you, came over, and then they asked me that first question. Where were you? Because I was on the engine with them, all right? And they wanted to know where the engine was. Right. And I had no idea, and they didn't know.
Memory loss, right?
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, well, later on they did find footage that showed up where they were, but they didn't know. In fact, one of the truckies was close to where my body was found at the site. So, but at the time, there was so much trauma going on in the firehouse. tending to the families, tending to people coming in, bringing flowers, candles, food, so you can all recover, right?
Yeah.
So it was totally unlike what a firehouse is. A firehouse is mostly a lot of men hanging out. No one comes in. They get to go and do their own thing and then hang out on the apron just to say hello to the people walking by. That was it. Now everyone's in there and they have no privacy. They don't have their own quiet time with each other. And most of the time they're serving the widows.
So you did experience memory loss.
Hit big time. I didn't remember anything.
I want to know, like, over the days
thanks.
Coming up after that,
Yes.
you had to have tried to piece together a story. How did that story come together? How did you come to understand what had gone on?
I had help, and you're going to love this one. Okay. Did you guys ever see, did you see the movie, I think it's called Flower Moon? Honey, do you remember the name of the whole story? Killers of the Flower Moon. Did you see it yet?
I've definitely heard of it. I have not seen it.
Killers of the Flower Moon by the same guy who
Martin Scorsese, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
There you go. David Grant wrote the book. David Grant is the name I'm going to mention again because he wrote the story. He is I guess you would say, a journalist that goes down deep. What do they call that? Deep journalism? From when you really do deep
Investigative journalism?
Investigative journalist, right? So he came to me and says, "Hi, I want to do a story on you." And I says, "Good. I'm going to tell you, though, I don't remember most of anything." He says, "Maybe I can help you out with that." So I didn't know what was going on. I remembered a few things before I went into the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I knew I went into the tower. I knew it was at the staging area with the guys. I remember hugging, embracing them and stuff. I did not remember everything that was going on inside the inside the tower. It was the South Tower, and outside the tower, because there were operations outside the tower as well. And I do remember at the time kind of running and then kind of getting lifted off the ground, getting back on the ground, and then crawling on the ground towards a light. I remember that. But the big question in my hand that I was in my head that I was asking to help from David Grant was, I didn't know if I was doing anything helpful. Remember, I told you on the job, the best thing was standing by your brothers, helping them out at all times, and doing that purposeful activity of helping people out. I didn't know because I didn't have the memory of it. So he said, maybe I can help you out. So he did his research, and he brought in people that rescued me from the site. And he brought in people, and we interviewed people who I ended up working with. I found out that I was working with and actually holding a hose to put fires outside the building. If you go to the site, you will see the only existing structure of the South Tower. It was a stainless steel crossover that you would walk over to go into the lobby. I was underneath that with the team, holding a hose, putting out car fires. All right? And I met up or talked on the phone or met up with all of them. When I was down on the ground, I was next to a Con Ed fire. That was actually, it was a gas pipeline that through the impact, it exposed the pipe and it was on flame. I thought I was going towards light. I was actually going towards a flame, you know? And then the guys who rescued me, there were quite a few firefighters. It was also the medical officer, Carrie Caroley, that was on the job. She's the one who also told me that you can't go full duty on the job. And then we had someone from, what do they call that, reserves? That's Oslo in Manhattan, I think in the Battery Park area. And someone represented from the EMT. So, and a police, I believe there was a police Port Authority officer. Mm-hmm. So you had all represented around me, laying on the ground with an SCBA, so self-contained breathing apparatus. So I got that part of the memory. All right, it's set. And that was good that David Grant helped me out with that. Right. And I got to talk with those people that were helping me out. It was really good. There's still a couple of people I still haven't.
Did it come back at all?
What's that? No. Unfortunately, the doctor said most of my memory was actually intact, even though it was in a subconscious state before the operation. But once they put me on anesthesia, they say your body actually tries to protect you from severe trauma by shutting down that short memory and stuff. So that's it. So sorry if anyone's disappointed.
No,
but like I said, there's some people say you'll get some of those memories maybe later on, but the probability gets less and less
as time goes on.
by.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we have this chapter of, we got O-Parks coming up. We got, I want to know more about that because I had trouble actually researching it. I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of things. You're very vocal about it. but it's
Yeah.
a very interesting thing that's going on over there. And then you also got involved in this play, this production, The Boys. Which have you met you've spoken to the author?
Yes, and
Yeah.
Nelson, and I even have a photograph. I'll share it with you if you like.
That's
Just
great.
got it done on 9/11 this year, right? Just a few days ago. I met up with her in person, but I also met her in 2001 as well.
Right. So did she approach you with this project, or did you find out about it?
I approached her. I
Really?
actually had her email because I was contacting her on a book she had written because they were doing a documentary called Bad Faith. It was about Christian nationalism that was on the rise. So she wrote a book. She's also an investigative journalist, and she did something called something network. I'll remember it, I'm sure.
That's fine.
Do you remember? Shadow Network. Okay, she wrote it. It's a great book if anyone wants to read something about the rise of Christian nationalism in the United States. And then she's working with someone to make a documentary called Bad Faith. It's on YouTube, by the way, for $1. But we may actually, through my Democratic Party, the Riverhead Democratic Party, we might have a screening of that one.
You're a poll worker, right?
What's that?
You're a poll worker.
I am
too,
a poll
right?
worker.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there early vote. And guess what? We're going in Shelter Island of all places. We'll be there from
That's nice.
26th
I have a
to
good friend
3rd.
in Shelter Island.
What's that?
I have a good friend in Shelter Island.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, if you do early voting, show up that day because in an early vote, remember, anywhere in Suffolk County,
Yeah.
you can vote and have a good day wherever you are. I believe, obviously, we do know that there's a critical time here. It's a lot of things are polar right now. You believe if you're a
Yeah.
Republican or Democrat, you have these certain values. And some people don't know there's a lot of gray areas in between.
Absolutely,
You know what I
Of course,
mean?
yeah.
I'm a Democrat personally.
I'm a Democrat as well.
Yeah. I'm registered that way. Would you say most firefighters tend to be conservatives or like more liberals?
Oh, I really wish I could tell you. I don't know enough. There's. If
don't
I
talk
remember
politics at
the last time
Firehouse,
there was
right?
16,000 people possibly on the.
Okay.
Getting their paycheck from the fire department. So I really don't know everyone.
I'm sure at the firehouse, you guys like don't really talk politics, right?
They did talk about it.
They did, okay.
But again, before 2001, there wasn't that awareness like.
It wasn't charged politically
Right,
as it is
no,
today.
not that much.
Yeah.
I mean, they would make fun of you, and
Oh,
they would
yeah.
have a different title for you. They would like if you're in the fire department and you like the old days. They didn't say, "Oh yeah, you're a Republican." They didn't say that as a party. They would say, "You're a dinosaur." Right? Or you're old school. That's what they would say because that's the way it should be, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then the other guys, I don't know what nicknames they gave to them. For me, I was always energetic about being on the job. I was always happy and stuff. And then for them, it may not have been a political thing. They were more concerned that some guys are more homophobic. Not I'm saying everyone,
Yeah.
but some guys were. So they were a little nervous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, no, I love the guys, working with the guys
Yeah.
and getting something done. It was great. But other guys just say, I like my job. I don't need to talk to you. And they have their own values. And
Yeah.
some of those are more conservative values. So, but I don't know. But I will say that after 9/11, there was some polarity. And you will see that when COVID came up, that was heightened.
It
I'm
was, yeah.
definitely not getting that
When,
shot.
when COVID came up, you were already ready for the symptoms because you had the olfactory nerve damaged before. So that's an interesting
Yeah.
thing to think about too. I was thinking
I'm
about
glad
that
it got
earlier.
repaired though.
Yeah.
Because I remember going into the firehouse and I get into what they call the house watch. That's where there's always a guy in the house watch that's waiting for the call,
Yeah.
engine, truck, and where you going, what kind of fire it is, or what
Is
kind
there
of
chili
emergency.
being made constantly?
What's that?
Is there chili being made constantly in the firehouse? Like chili? Food being
Oh,
cooked?
chili? I don't know.
No? There's not food being cooked
you know
all the
what?
time?
Depends on what
Man.
firehouse you go to.
Okay.
You know, everyone has a diet. There are ones where they're mostly young guys and the diets are different.
Yeah.
And you got when I was and like I told you, the first firehouse I was in was over in Howard Beach, and they were right by the water, so we had a lot of seafood. So we had lobster dinner.
Lobster dinner at the
You know what I mean?
firehouse.
That's
Clams,
amazing.
Clams, okay.
fresh fish
Baked
from
clams?
the inlet. What's that?
Baked clams, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we had it all. We had 13, but the other thing, everyone had to contribute into the meal.
Yeah.
So they used to complain about that sometimes. So when you're used to like $4 meals, but when the seafood came out, it was a $13 per person meal
Yeah.
to pay for it. But it was really good, and everyone took turns making their meal, and everyone had their own specialty. And you know, you either were waiting for it or you were dreading it. So
Yeah.
You said you retired in 2005?
2004.
2004.
Yeah, in October.
And that was due to injury or?
Definitely do that. I was on light duty at that time, and I wanted to get on. And in fact, I stayed on purposely to say I want to go full duty. And to Kerry Kelly, She was the one who was the medical officer that was at my body when it was in the site.
Wow.
She was the one that determined if I was going to go back on or not. And she told me the story of why, no, you can't go back. And why I was crying in the office with her. I mean, we're in the medical office, which is like a high floor up there in Brooklyn. And I kept in the office. I was all smiles. I was glad to see her.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the details until years later. I don't know if you know this, but her son is a comedian on Saturday Night Live.
Really? What's her name?
His name is Jost. He was always the news guy. I can't remember his. Honey, do you remember the comedian's name? Colin Jost. It was him and Michael Shea that did the news on Saturday.
Weekend Update, yeah.
Right, the Weekend Update.
Yeah,
So Jost wrote a book about his life, and would you believe it? He talked about his mom's adventure on 9/11.
Yeah.
And then my name came up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait a minute. He's telling my story.
So why did she say you couldn't continue?
Okay. So she told me, listen, Kev, you can't go in, and I'll tell you why. I said, I had a firefighter. Actually was an officer, and he got seriously injured, and then while he was not going to be on the job, he got all the bolts taken out, and he wanted to go back on the job, and he was actually ready to sue the fire department because he wanted to get back on the job. And she said, I watched his case, I read his whole case, and I made the decision to put him back on. And then he died on 9/11. So I put him in, and now he's dead. So I'm not putting you on because I'm never going to do that again. Someone who dealt with these injuries, you're going to take the light duty. And you can stay on the job as a light duty, but you're not going to go full duty, meaning I'm not going to carry the hose, I'm not going to work on the team. And that hurt. So I was teary-eyed, I left, but she made the decision.
Right.
Was that more about her baggage to not let you do that? Because
Yes,
did you tell
and
her
also
that,
the fire department liability. I am a liability. If let's say I go back into a fire
and you get hurt?
and I get seriously hurt, there's a lot more going on. So she had to think about a lot more besides just her own personal story.
Yeah.
I think it sold better to me knowing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I was accepting of it. But I'm sure that she had other people who above her and her peers that said, we have to follow a certain canon and protocol. And I don't have any regrets, but I will say if someone said, would you go back on the job? I'd say, oh yeah, hell yeah, I'd go back on.
So if you knew that you might die doing the job, you would say, put me back on?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, remember, I felt secure with the team of people I was working with. So I felt I would have been taken care of. There's always a chance that you would get hurt. There's always a chance that you're going to go left instead of right and then collapse. There was a chance I was going to die in 9/11. I just happened to miss probably hitting some wall and getting smashed like a pancake. Who knows? So there's always a chance. But to me, it was worth it at the time. And also, I did not have a serious girlfriend at the time. I did not have kids.
Right.
So I didn't feel that compulsion to say, oh, I have to hold back because I'm accountable and responsible for a family.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, how light is light duty? Like, what does that entail? What is light duty? What does that mean to be on light duty?
Like desk duty, basically?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Light duty means that you end up showing up in one of the administrative buildings.
Okay.
I know. And at first, it was great because when I got to the light duty, I got to light duty right after my injuries were good enough for me to come back to the job. It was January of 2002, and they said, you need to return back. I'm like, this is great, right?
Yeah.
So I thought they're going to get me set to go back, and they says, no, you're going to be in light duty position, but where do you want to go? They asked me. Normally, I would think they would have sent me to the position where I'm holding the cup where someone's doing the urine test to see if they got drugs.
Yeah.
No, they allowed me to, and I said, I would like to go to, and I had a name. I mean, I had an answer. I would like to go to hazmat operations. 2319! Now, why? Well, because I knew hazmat is, by the way, is a short term for hazardous materials. Hazardous materials, they respond to all jobs that deal with a gas release or a fuel fire or a chemical release or anthrax. Things that deal with radioactive materials. And I was so primed from the last incident we had, I said, that's where I need to be so I can help my other brothers so they don't get hurt. So I said, if I can't be in the hazmat team where they respond, I like to be in hazmat operations where even as a light duty, I get to contribute by creating curriculum or teaching the guys in that particular field. My father worked with a guy, I can't remember his name right now, that wrote the first manuals for hazardous material operations. And I remember when he was doing that, he would spend a lot of time reading through code and help writing documents that firefighters had to follow in case of fires and explosions involving hazardous materials. So I had an affinity. I loved chemistry and stuff. So I decided to go there, and I loved the job. Now, getting back to light duty, I ended up doing that for a few years, and it really was good because I got to meet up a lot of people, especially a lot of chiefs. And then when they called me in again to the office for an evaluation, if you're going to stay on light duty or not, they said, I'm telling you right now that we may not be able to keep that job that you want, the one you like. You know, we can't assure you that. And this is a good time for you to retire because they used to use the term, the numbers are good. What they mean by numbers, it's code for if you retire right now, the retirement, because you're going to get 3/4 of your pay, you'll get the most you can get in your salary. But if you wait longer, your salary that you'll get for 3/4 will be less. So you have to make the decision. And I had a tough decision to make on light duty. They said, listen, Kevin, there's a possibility you're going to be the guy holding the urine cup. You know what I mean? So I said, okay, well, that's still okay because I'm sure I could find a way to do a job. Then my brother talked to me again, and he says, Kevin, you are happy doing nearly anything. So you don't really need to do the job at the fire department. And you already did the job that everyone has waited for. That's a fire of a century.
Right.
9/11.
That is true, yeah.
Right.
And no one would ever question you to leave the job. You already did the job. You don't have to do 20 years to say you did the job. You can go. And I said, you know what? Maybe I will. And then I said, I'll do it.
So let's get into O-Parks.
Okay, then.
At what year did you start doing that? What's your role in it? And tell us a little bit about what it is.
Sure. I went down as just a ride with some guy that said he bought property down there. And he was kind of exploiting the real estate agents. He was pretending that he was going to buy new property. So we would get in the car and they would take us to other property. But I just happened to see this property on that tour. And I said, I like this. That we climbed up a tree because we couldn't see anything. We climbed on the tree and you could see the Pacific Ocean from like almost 180 degrees. And I'm like, this is so beautiful. I don't know why anyone wouldn't want this property. And the property was cheap. And I bought 46 acres of it.
Oh my gosh.
So,
In Nicaragua?
In Nicaragua. And I'm like, I didn't think it was crazy at the time. I thought, okay, I can back it up. Costa Rica, they had increased their property value up 800% in the last 12 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Nicaragua is its neighbor. And I was only 6 miles away from the border. And there was a border.
So you're thinking this might go up too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was only thinking that, and I'm not that kind of guy. I was the guy, I think we had this conversation about making movies. I wanted to be the next Spielberg. So you could see that I had this idea. I like to make stories. I liked being a storyteller, and I like being artistic and creative. But just owning land and leaving it alone just seems silly. But I did it thinking, land is wealth, and it may go up, and then I can sell it, and then I can
And set locations too.
What's that?
And a set location.
Ain't good?
Yeah.
Right. So I said, okay, that's what I'll do. And then I got bored holding the land. I said, well, what can I do that's not too much money? Because I don't have a lot of money.
Right.
What can I do that's improving on it while I wait for people to want to be interested in it? So I said, well, let's start with a bicycle ride, bicycle trails. And then why not walking trails as well? So people can come to the thing, but I'm not really affecting the property.
Yeah.
But the first thing I said I wanted to do, if I'm going to do something like that, was we have to do the control of the erosion of the soil. Their property was actually an historical site where a big war took place. It was called the Revolutionary War. The natives, the people that had been there for many years, were being ruled by what they called a despot. His name was Somoza. And it was a whole family that had been ruling it for years. There was starting to be a lot of pressure about him coming over to that area because they found some wealth in it. At one point, they thought they found oil, so they brought trucks in and they started drilling in. They found out there was no oil. At least the oil was too young, and they said in about 10,000 years this oil will be ready, but not now. But at that time, they were making good business cutting down their trees, and the president said, at the time, I don't know if they call him the president, but his name's Somoza. He would come in there and say, you know what, I'm going to come on down there and take some of that. I'm going to have guys do the trees for you, and you'll work for my companies. You know what I mean? But you won't make any money. So these farmers / people trying to make money cutting trees were very upset. And then other people were upset because they didn't feel life was going well the way they wanted. So they had an uprising. The uprising turned into a guerrilla warfare. All right? That land that I'll just sum it up, is called Hill 11155. Many Nicaraguenses died on that surface, especially when the United States got involved with the Iron Contra affair, right? They had people come in, attack their team, the people who were supporting the Sandinista team. And there were helicopters there were missiles there. There were still bullet casings when I showed up at the property around the tree. They were never moved. So I said, this is an historic site. I've got to
Preserve it.
Yeah. So that's starting the process.
Is there landmines still there, or is it like totally safe?
You know, I can't tell you if there was any landmines there, but I'll tell you what we did find. We did find, I think it's called an M180 missile there. I don't remember the name of it, but
unexploded.
What's that? That's exactly. It was unexploded. The military came in. This has only happened 2 months ago, and we're talking. I've had this property since 2007, and we're constantly developing it in certain ways to allow for reforestation, or for having things that are getting us ready for if there's another El Nino or the climate changes to the point where it's really dry. We're trying to make sure that these forests will be able to handle the climate change. So as they do these movements, like planting a fruit tree, they discover these things, and then we back out. We call the military, and they come in. We still have things. We have a helmet from warfare with a bullet in it, embedded in it. Yeah.
Wow.
So they just recently did a monument next door to our property, so people will come every year to celebrate their independence from that dictator. So
like, what is it like being a foreigner and buying land in like a foreign country? Are you welcomed, would you say, or are people kind of skeptical of you? How do they feel about you?
They welcome you. I heard when I first got on the job. First got over there. I read books on businesses in Nicaragua, thinking, who knows, right? And then I heard that there's a love-hate relationship with Nicaraguenses. With the United States citizens, because the Iron Contra affair.
My fellow Americans, I've said on several occasions that I wouldn't comment about the recent congressional hearings on the Iran-Contra matter. Once I realized I hadn't been fully informed, I sought to find the answers. Some of the answers I don't like. Our original initiative rapidly got all tangled up in the sale of arms, and the sale of arms got tangled up with hostages.
There was an aircraft carrier in the cove of San Juan del Sur.
Did you vote for Reagan?
What's that?
What?
No. No, I did not.
That was a joke, man.
Yeah. I thought that was true, though. That was Reagan. I did not vote for Reagan.
That's not my sole subject this evening.
Off of what Steven was asking a little bit earlier, is it like buying land in a foreign country? Was that your first time like down there? Was that your first time in that area when you went down?
Like I said, it was all a fluke. Yeah. I followed the guy, and I didn't really like the guy. He was more like a capitalist. Turns out he owed people money too. He was like I can't remember, the Howard Hughes kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? But young,
like Rich Dad Poor Dad type of dude.
That kind of philosophy.
Okay, yeah.
You know, going to those those landmark where you pay money so they could teach you how to be a leader and stuff like that, and then you exploit everyone.
So what is the state of O Parks now? What are you guys doing, and what is your future vision for it at the moment?
Okay, yeah, in fact, this is a big year for us because when I first bought the property, it was on a dream that they're going to build a highway in front of my property that made it easy to people to go from San Juan del Sur, which is a tourist city, which, by the way, became popular through a guy on Long Island, Vanderbilt. If you know the Vanderbilt Museum,
I do,
Vanderbilt
Planetarium.
What's that? Planetarium.
Yes.
Vanderbilt was one of the richest guys at the turn of the century. Okay, and he actually, during a gold rush, he created a ride that went from New York City all the way down to what was, let's put it in quotes, the Panama Canal, where you went from the southern part of Nicaragua into the lake, and then you took a horse ride over to San Juan del Sur, where they replenished, they got onto another ship, and they went right up to where the gold rush was being held.
It's a dangerous lake.
It was a
lake, Nicaragua. It's a freshwater lake.
It is.
But in that lake is actually a very dangerous type of shark called the bull shark. Very dangerous.
I heard that. I haven't seen any spottings of it. I heard about it.
Yes.
I heard about it.
The most aggressive.
A freshwater shark.
The most aggressive shark, the bull shark. Which I would think you'd be like, okay, it's a lake. Let me jump in. It's fresh water. There's no sharks in here.
The bull shark.
Actually, the most aggressive shark on the planet is in there.
By far, not by a little bit,
Yes.
but like by far, by a huge margin, is the shark species that is responsible for the most shark attacks. Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of that.
Now you
That's
know.
I
amazing.
think we
Yeah,
have like
now I
300
know.
cases a year.
And
or
millions of
something on the
years
coast.
ago, it was open to the Atlantic Ocean, and that's
Yeah.
why they got
Yeah.
in, and then it shut down, and they got stuck in there.
So when you buy land in a foreign country,
Yes.
what is that process like? Are they more skeptical of you for being like a foreigner? Or are you more welcome to someone, okay, you're going to bring wealth and class?
It is money. It comes down to money.
Okay.
I was trying to get to that love-hate relationship. The reason why they love
They love you.
is because you have money.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
now you going in there, how skeptical were you?
How was I?
How skeptical were you? Were you going in there thinking,
I was nervous, and I made sure to go through the right channels to find out. I listened to people who had mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Some people that happened because they exploited people. Sometimes it happened because they rushed in with their rosy colored glasses and they made mistakes. For example, there was a guy that was selling people property up on the hill, and he sold it to you, but then he immediately sold it to another person,
Yeah.
and then another person, because he just needed to get money in, but you never really owned the property.
So
And then you do something about that. The step you were asking about, you go to a lawyer. And the lawyers are professionals, and they do something like an investigation to make sure there's no lien on the property.
Yes.
There's no one who owns that property that's put up somewhere else that you don't know about. They call it a legal opinion. And once they go through the legal opinion and say, you know what, it's been cleared of it, that property is definitely owned by the guy that you're purchasing from. And then I go through a real estate agent to make sure it's.
now, when you buy property there,
Yeah.
like, how do you pay a property tax? Because in some countries, property tax works where you pay the property tax when you buy the property the first time. In Spain, it works that way.
Ooh.
In this country, you pay it each year. Do you not?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we do that every year.
In Nicaragua?
That helps the roads. In Nicaragua, it's every year.
Every year.
And I will say this, 46 acres. Now, it could change because of the highway I was going to tell you about. It is now, for 46 acres, $140
Now,
a year.
do you ever get concerned?
Did
Because
you hear what he just said?
$140.
$140 a
That's
year.
it.
now, do you ever
Yeah.
get concerned the fact
Steven, that's incredible.
Yeah.
now, do you ever get concerned the fact that you're in like a South American country, and
Yeah.
the possibility of like a military dictatorship sprouting up, or like
Yeah.
the property being
We had one
seized
in
by the
2018.
government?
In 2018, we had an uprising. And the uprising caused me to leave.
I would have left too.
Was that?
I would have left too.
Okay, for a little while. And then, of course, COVID happened, which delayed it a little bit further. But it happened because the people who were uprising against their own president who wanted a canal built in there.
He wanted China to build it.
Was that?
He wanted China to build a canal
Exactly.
through there. Yeah.
Actually, even better, it was a Chinese...
A Chinese-owned company.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, of course, the state owns every company in China anyway.
But they weren't involved, but yet. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
during the financial crisis in 2008, 2010, he kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
You know what I
They're
mean?
not involved, but if you're a Chinese company, they can just nationalize you whenever they want. So it's like, yeah, we'll be involved when we
they're-
say so.
And you have a good point. And China is involved now. These are in the press. They
Yeah.
have made arrangements to develop Nicaragua. They're going to get another huge airport up north. And they're going to, and a lot more Chinese people coming in. During the development of the canal that was stopped, a lot of people from China had come in and actually set up properties.
Now, do you ever feel unsafe as a foreigner in that country?
I do, and when things like that would happen, like the uprising, I felt uncomfortable. But when I did come back, believe it or not, I had been there for so long. The locals love me.
That's cool.
And the politics, I stay out of the radar.
Smart.
That's
very
very
smart.
smart.
And that's
yeah.
why I chose a wildlife reserve, because the president, Ortega, is more of a capitalist. Let's
Yeah.
just say he's more leans towards that.
Yeah.
I focus on what I think is a bit important. I want to keep the forest going, and people have respected me. I'm usually wearing a hat that looks like I'm Indiana Jones.
You could be Indiana Jones.
I could, I guess, but the point is down there, someone first said it, and I said, I'll just keep on wearing the hat, because that's the fun thing. I'm just a white guy in mostly Nicaraguan. There's only 7 million people in there. And to give you a comparison, New York City alone is 11 million. I have 11 guys that work on site.
Locals?
Locals.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've been working on my site since 2007. Up now, they're almost getting up to 20 years soon. It will be close to that. 2027 will be 20 years. And I've already set them up really well. I pay them almost 3 or 4 times that they usually get paid, the average pay. I already am giving them sort of a pension because they're going to get part of my Roth IRA when I go down.
God damn, you are a generous guy.
Well, I want to be, and I would pay half their medical bills. I coax them to do what we have. There is a Social Security system down there,
Wow, okay, that's
but
good.
they're not satisfied. They weren't satisfied with it, and they didn't want the government because the government they didn't really like.
They don't trust it,
rural
probably.
people don't like the government. So I said, okay, I can't force you to do these things. I can't force you to have a bank account. So I'll work around that, and that's what I did.
Now, to you politically, what issue to you matters the most?
Ooh, good. Thank you for asking. For me, I'm going to speak for, because a lot of the youth is obviously, I do definitely feel the environment is a catastrophic a problem that we have. Also, I'm really big on economic inequality. I really, really feel that's a big push. Like, for example, we don't have a social... I like mutual aid between people in a society. Well, we can't have that if the government's not getting the funds to help us out. I want those funds to come in, and I want them to come from the billionaires.
The 1%.
What's that?
The 1%.
That's correct. You know, by the way, for most people here in this room that are making about 60,000, we are the 1% in the world.
We are.
Yes.
But in the United States,
it's an interesting
you know,
thing.
we've had an increase of millionaires, but the shame of it all is that we don't see them giving back to society.
Right.
If they were so smart, well, don't you think it's smart to give back? If you're so lucky,
Not when you're greedy.
then it would be nice to give back. What's that?
Not when you're greedy.
Not when you agree. That's
You know,
correct.
take
And,
someone like Jeff Bezos, where it's like, how much is he paying in taxes? Is it
Bezos,
commensurate
Elon
with how
Musk.
much he makes?
Right.
Probably not.
I can't
And they
get
can't
over-
tax them on that one. But now with the new policy, they look at, well, I didn't say policy, new law or legislation they're working on where they actually may be able to tax the unrealized gains of people
Yes.
who are above, I think it was 400,000. I'm liking that. I really am liking that. And if I have $100,000 in the bank and you're going to take it, I'll say go for it. I don't care.
Now, some folks would be like, well, how can you take money from someone like Jeff Bezos? He built this company by himself. He did all this. And it's like, well, the actual tax dollars that we all paid help benefit his company. That way he can have nice roads to drive on and be able to take his packages to and from different places. Why shouldn't he have to invest in the very thing that helped him to build his company?
Yeah. I heard the argument when people think about the fair tax. The argument I have with my brother sometimes. He's an independent, but he leans towards Democrat. Anyway, so he and I disagree with it, and I basically said that if you are a billionaire, you don't need to care about the roads because you have your private plane.
Yeah.
You don't need to care about the public pool because you have your own pool. So they don't care, so they don't care, and they want that money. They don't want to go to that school system. They don't care about because then they're just going to grow up. You might become more liberal, and then you vote out a guy who's actually putting in laws that I want, right? So I don't want. Koch brothers were great to put in policies. I mean, to enable politicians to keep the buses out, the public buses out. No, we want more cars because more cars is more fossil fuels. More fossil fuels is a good thing for our business, you know. So
And the worst part is they call people like you and me socialists.
Right, I'm more of a social democrat.
Same here, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know the difference between the two, I look it up and then I forget it. You know, because I would say purist parties, they'll even say it. Anyone who in just politics, anyone's a pure democracy, very hard to hold. But if a pure, what's the word I'm thinking of? Dictatorship or socialism or
pure
communism.
communism,
If you do a purist of anything, it doesn't look like they have good long-term success.
Even pure
But if you get it
capitalism.
right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You can't keep that flight going up with the numbers going up with money. Eventually, you have to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So with and exploiting people, someone's going to have to die. You know.
Yeah.
So, but with you have a balance, socialism and democracy, which we've already had for years. When you think about one of the first things we put in was the Social Security system, and then after that, you got the Medicare,
Public libraries,
and then the Medicaid, and the public libraries as
firefighters.
the local thing. Exactly.
You know.
So you need
Let the
these
free
things.
market decide. It's like, well,
Right.
if your house is burning down, you shouldn't have the free market decide. There should be some.
It was more like Trump had said,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're not putting money in. Well, then in the UN, you're not putting money into the UN. Well, then we're not going to save your country."
Yeah.
What? No, that doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't have a privatized fire department. That doesn't really.
No,
doesn't really work.
You could, but I don't know what it would be like.
Yeah, it'd be kind of scary.
Yeah, pay to have your fire put out. It's like no, even if you can't pay or not, the fire should.
And I'm not against
still be put out.
Yeah, I'm not against private, but I think when you go overkill. Because sometimes you find up going shifting. Japan at one point was all unregulated and private, and then they took it back over again, and it worked out pretty well for themselves. You know, now you can see these beautiful, fast racing trains that are partially owned by the government. They have TVs in there, and it's very comfortable.
Bullet
very
trains.
fast,
Yeah,
you know.
But a lot of folks lack the imagination of saying, imagine being able to go from DC to New York in 90 minutes.
Right.
You know that like you're crazy. You know what I mean? When like we could have that right here. We could have like bullet trains here doing that exact same thing. But
right.
You said in the fire department you were already laying out your plans in the 90s. Was it the 90s or early 2000s to build the house?
1993.
Okay, so yeah.
I was living in a foreclosed house, in fact.
Wow.
It was abandoned, foreclosed house, and some guy said...
Were you squatting?
I was living in my car because I was living in my car at the time. I had just... why was I living in my car? I think I was driving in my car, and I was living in another house where the guy said, you can't stay here any longer. I was paying rent because the other couple that was sharing the rent with me, they left. They decided to do their own thing. Like, okay, so now what am I going to do? So that guy said, well, you can't stay here because I'm going to rent the whole house to someone else. I said, all right, I'm out. I was in my car for a few days with my dog. And some guy said, well, you can't have the dog in the car because it's getting warmer months. People were complaining, and I'm like, you're right. That sounds horrible. And some guy had his heart open and said, hey, listen, you can stay in this foreclosed house. It'll cost you about $200 a month or something like that. I don't even know the order of things, but I got to stay in this foreclosed house. And when I was there going, but I want to live in a home. And I was working as a bus driver at the time, and also I was dressing up in costumes. Like I had made a Ninja Turtle costume, which was really authentic.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and I was being Batman. I was being all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I was trying to raise money so therefore I can eventually build a house. So I said, let me look into something I could build. The first one was an Earthship idea, but I'm going to leap towards the dome. The Earthship is something you make out of tires and stuff like that. It's another story, and someone could look it up. It's called Earthship. Made by a guy named Reynolds. Years ago, and that was big for me. But then Dome came up because I said, oh, it says easy to build, and I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. I was just kind of by myself. So I said, easy to build. I can get the kit and I can build it. I just need to find property. So rushing forward, I designed what it should look like when I built it, and on a computer screen. Then I drew it up, and I had a really weird ideas. One was I was going to have a big netting up at the top, and I'd sleep at the top, and I'd live in this big dome, and I would make movies in it. It would be a huge studio, and I'd use LED because LED was just coming out. Actually, compact fluorescent was big. So I said I'm going to make all compact fluorescent, but it was going to be the ones that have the balanced white in it. It's 6000K, and I was going to do shootings in it. And then as I started to go, I was actually able to get enough money to go to the State College of New York to do my master's, and it was in educational technology. I just immediately got a job. I was able to take that job and start working on the design plans. I found, believe it or not, plans of a dome when they were building one for Suffolk Community College for salt storage. They threw it in the dumpster. I pulled it out. I started to read what a blueprint looks like, and then I made a duplicate of it in my computer. Then I handed it to an engineer saying, this is what I want. And it was so simple. I had studies, but the internet was becoming a little bit more prominent at the time. You still had to do the dial-in, right? But once you got on, I learned about something for MIT built called the X project, where they actually had everything that you need in a house, the heating system, the water system, the kitchens and stuff, all in one little hexagon area. And so I built a hexagon area, and I was going to live up at the top of the dome. It was weird like that. But over time, and talking with firefighters when I got on the job, because by 1999 I got on the job, I was actually I found property on a fluke. I was going on a boat with my mom's stepdad, and I saw a property for sale, and I bought it. It was on Long Island in Baiting Hollow. And then the plans went to the engineer. They were done, and I didn't have any obstacles with my design. It was simple at the time. It was a wood frame, a kit. And he says, as long as it meets the code, I'm in. So I'll make it long story short. I'll tell you about the structure. It's 70 feet in diameter.
Okay.
Okay. That means it's 3,760 square feet on the first floor. All right.
Wow.
Now, when I first go there, I built a huge model of 18 inches with, like balsam wood when you make dollhouses out of it, right?
Uh-huh.
And I cut each one up, and I made all the 624 triangles. Then I built the inside. Then I brought that to the building department to show them what it would look like and give them the plans. And they said, is it made of wood? Yeah, then it's fine. But they wanted to cover their ass. So they said, you have to also talk to in Albany, the New York State Build Code supervisor or high guy. I think his name was Richard Smith at the time. So I went up there and he immediately loved it. He didn't even, I was like ready to show him the model. I was ready for him to give me lots of questions. He says, no, dome's great. And that was it. It was accepted.
Oh, cool.
Right.
So there was no obstacles at all.
No obstacles
That's
at all to
beautiful.
get it done. They had obstacles earlier when someone went to build a dome and they were going to sue the Riverhead. So they just said, you know what? We don't need issues. As long as it meets the code. And now I built this dome so it was, and the reason why I chose the dome structure was multiple. One, I heard, easy to build. Two, it uses less timber to have the most volume.
Right.
So less volume, more volume for less wood, I was in. Next, it was easy on the eyes. When you looked at it inside, you think, that is the prettiest thing you've ever seen. As long as it's the side. Small, you can feel confined, but that big, it was a nice size. And then the other thing was, it was supposed to be economical. And the truth is, depending on how you build any home, it's economical based on what kind of materials you put in it and who builds it. So I was able to keep the price down. I was able to get the property tax down for a lot of other methods. So most of the materials in there were actually recycled. Even the roof, when I first was doing it, a lot of the materials I put on there were made with recycled materials or reclaimed or reused. So
that's one of the most fascinating things of the whole project, I think. That's one of the things that really draws my eyes to it, that I really love about it, is that you really went out of your way to make sure every last corner of this was in some way green, economical, efficient. Everything has a theme. Every room in your dome has a theme, which is cool.
That's right.
Yeah. What are some of the themes?
Okay, so the first floor bathroom. I don't know if I told you this. I used to work at Universal Studios. I was always fascinated how they made sets for movies. I was going to be an actor down there, but the bills from my college, I had to come back. So, what I took from them was they build these New York City sets. They build sets in Long Island, and I said, I want to get a theme in my bathroom. What could I do? And I said, well, I guess I want to go something like old and ancient. So I went so far back to Paleolithic times, and I made a cave. So I didn't want someone to do it for me because I felt it was a little nutso to ask someone to do it. And I didn't want to go and buy expensive stuff. So luckily for me, there were dumpsters filled. There was dumpsters next to a guy who does marble and stone work. And I just asked the guy, can I take the stuff? And he said, sure. So the whole floor was made with pieces of this stuff that's really expensive per square foot, and I got it for free.
Can we come by and see it one of these days?
What's that?
Can we come by and see it one of these days?
Absolutely. Of course you can. Now that the play's over, I have a lot more time available.
That'd be great.
Right?
That'd be great.
So you got that. I made the walls look like a cave inside. I got concrete. I got mesh, and I covered it up with the concrete. I made sure it was tinted brownish gray. I made the shower look like that. I built with regular stone up so you were kind of not closed in, so you could walk in. I have vines, plastic vines. I got things from Dollar Tree that look like moss there. I have a skeleton skull right in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it real?
What's that?
It's
no,
not.
ceramic. I always have to make sure people know that before they go in the bathroom. The bathroom was actually made with cedar stakes that I bolted together so it looks like that. And I have antlers on the outside of it. On the inside, I believe it or not, I actually made a lock mechanism with I don't have it now, but as an axe, so a hatchet. So you'd have the hatchet so you could lock the door so no one got in. And then bamboo walls. And I even had a time I painted the walls with stars, like a little white glow in the dark. So when the lights went out, because the lights go on as soon as you get in the room, but if you stay in there too long, it will go off. So you can actually see as if you're looking out of a hut on one side. So it's nice.
How do you heat that? I know it's a really big open
good
space,
question.
tall buildings. How do you heat that?
Right. There's multiple ways you could do it. One is passive solar heating, where all the windows are only on the south side. And the windows are made specially designed. I had these panels made. So normal energy efficient windows are based on all of the United States. So even the hot climate and the cool climates, they had the same design windows. But I didn't want that. I wanted to allow more light to come in during the during the wintertime.
Right.
So I had it so the coatings were placed on the panels to allow more solar heat gain in the house, so they would hit the floor, and the floor was a dark color of polished concrete, smooth polished concrete of a dark, like a dark chocolate color.
Right.
So when the sun hits dark colors, it absorbs the sunlight, the solar insolation, to help heat it up. Now that's solar heat gain. Plus the roof at the time was green, which also allowed a lot more heat to come through. But then later on I changed it to white because I want a cool roof, because the summers are worse than the winters for me, because I usually spend winters in Nicaragua.
Right.
And it's actually better for the environment as well. So the next is the floor itself is made with hydronic floor heating. There are thousands of lines of thousands of feet of PEX tubing. That's polyethylene, cross polyethylene tubing in the floor filled with water. And that water gets heated by a little box. It looks like the size of, let me see, like a desktop computer.
Right.
The early ones, right? And that runs at 14,000 watts.
Right,
now that 14,000 watts is powered by my solar array outside and a wind turbine, which hasn't been working for years. I'm working on it right now, fixing it. So that powered that for the most of the time. When it's not being used, all that electricity, that solar array gets banked. They call it an energy bank, where the power authority takes all that energy, keeps it there, and puts it as like a tab. So when I end up having to use it, I don't have to pay any electricity.
Which is great.
So that's the floor, how to heat it, the floor. I'm working on another system you may have heard of. They called evacuated tubes.
Okay.
They are taking the sun, the heat, water passes through that, then into an exchanger, and then heats the water that cycles through the floor.
Is it true that PEX tubing, that has like a limited life expectancy, that you kind of have to
PEX
change it
tubing?
out? Yeah.
Right, yeah. If it's exposed to the elements.
Okay, so how you have it set up is pretty much just permanent.
It'll last a lifetime.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw you had a 40-foot rope. You were not sure if you were going to keep it there.
I climbed that.
You climb it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, all the time?
I actually did it 2 weeks ago when there was an interview with I guess is famous in Sweden. I think his name. Hang on. Gosh, I can't. Rider Folk Productions. He was famous 10 years ago, and he decided to
Is that where you got that
easy.
drone shot?
Was that?
It's the same guy who got the drone shot?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
same
a cool
guy got the
shot.
drone shot. Really friendly guy. Yes.
On the outside perimeter, you have a beautiful garden. You have like four stacked layers of tire rows.
Yes.
And the tires have all of these really beautiful, they look very tropical.
Yeah.
Yeah, tropical plants.
I have a tropical plants in some areas, and that's we call the subtropics. We call that the subtropics, that area. Yeah, that's where the wind turbine turbine is, by the way. I actually carved it so you can sit down. I grew zoysia grass so you can sit on the zoysia grass, but it's actually a seat.
Right, and the grass naturally doesn't grow past
that's 4
inches, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that means that you don't have to really maintain it like that, which
right.
is I thought that was really cool too.
It is fun, and it's really thick too.
Do you have anything in there that's like stuff that you got from Nicaragua? Do you have any like Nicaragua plants?
I would say I'll duplicate it. I bought tropical plants to put there that are also growing in Nicaragua, but bring in anything agricultural is
that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And by the way, thanks for mentioning the tires. The tires were neat because see, I played with the building department on this one. I always follow the rules because I never want to break a rule because it kicks you in the end. Yeah. So the tires are 800 car tires in four tiers, almost like stadium seats things, right? Going up. And I went to them and I said, "Are you okay? I'm going to build this, or do I have to have building permits just for that?" And I knew what the code was, but I want to make sure he said it. Mm-hmm. He said, as long as you don't go each wall higher than 4 feet, and as long as you're not making it out of wood or steel, you don't need a permit. They consider it landscaping. So I was able to get around with that.
That's awesome.
And the tires were free. The guy who worked the warehouse, called STS Warehouse, he was trying to get rid of them because on Long Island, the policy was you can't incinerate tires on Long Island. So they would send them to Connecticut where they incinerated them, but that cost money.
Yes.
But I saved him a lot of money, and I had 800 tires to put in place.
Now the shape of the dome.
Yes.
Over the top. It's naturally it's a dome. It's round.
It's a hemisphere.
Okay. When it rains, do you get trenches around the outside?
I solved that problem.
You did.
I did a lot of planning, and also I got to also give credit to some of the firefighters because I used to give my plans to other people, and also remember I told you my father was he's like a safety officer, and he says all the problems that could occur. So what I did was, guys, was if you look around the perimeter, you're gonna see these beautiful pink field stone, all right, that are on the ground every 15 feet. Underneath it are 5 tires with a fabric on it, so only water goes down and not mud. So when there's rain, it goes right down, and below that, it's all this virgin white sand. So water immediately goes right through. So I will never have to worry around the perimeter because you are correct. There is a threat that and 1/4 of the dome area, just one, I guess, arc of it, that's 400 gallons for every inch of rain. So that's a lot of gallons coming off a roof.
Yeah.
We're working on a divert that goes over from that to a gutter. The gutter feeds out to a rain garden.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So that means that's even more like going into the theme of like renewable and stuff.
Yes, it is.
The rainwater to do something.
It's great for the environment. It's great for the soils and great for the wildlife habitat.
That's great. Okay. And then I saw you were putting a new coat on the top too. A coat.
4 coats, bro.
4 coats.
4 coats. I put 4
and you're doing that
coats
all yourself. You're like up there.
all by myself with
amazing.
a roller that was no longer than like 12 inches wide. And it was trying sometimes on the rope. I really enjoyed my time on top of the scaffolding, going up and down with a long pole going up and down, and making sure that I didn't see the green parts of the roof, and making sure, because it's a 12-year warranty on a elastomeric coating, which has titanium dioxide, because they haven't gotten the one that actually blocks not only the solar insulation, but blocks almost all the UVA, UVB, UVC going through, and even radiant, infrared.
Right.
Once that coating is more commercial, I'll probably do it again on the roof. Because by that time it'll only be 1 coat. Because right now 4 coats allows for at least 15 or 20. So I'll be in my late 60s and early 70s when I have to do it again.
Do you do the sauna? There's a little left field, but do you do sauna? You ever tried sauna?
Sauna?
Yeah.
Do you mean like going in the water sauna? Or
No.
you mean going in a room where it gets all hot?
Yeah.
I heard that's healthy for you.
Oh,
It's great for you.
Man.
Yeah, I heard that. No, I don't have a sauna in my house either.
It's actually, you might be surprised at how easy it is constructed. It's just hot rocks. You could do it with a natural
bet.
fire.
I
Most
bet.
people do it electric. I
Right.
know you have the solar panels.
I have solar panels.
So you could probably do it electric. You'd
Right.
also use probably just fire to build. Use hot rocks. It heats the room.
Thank you.
Usually wooden boarding.
It's a
Dude,
good idea.
You gotta
I'm
get
thinking
into the
the
sauna
next
stuff.
project I have that's new is a rock wall.
Oh,
I know you get into it.
Oh man,
For climbing, or
I kind of love
Inside, yeah.
you want
I'm
to
gonna do a
climb
rock wall
inside?
Yeah, because the thing curves up a little bit.
that. I can help you. I can help you root set.
I already thought of that before the interview. It says, he's into
I
ninja,
can help you root
and I saw
set.
a video. I said, you know what, guys?
I know
He's a
how to
rock
do-
climber too.
Yeah. So I gotta tell you, I already have 3,000 of the rocks.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I have it. I got it from a company. When I started getting things, I would tell the guys, this is going to be a super energy efficient home, a LEED qualified home, and it's going to be a showcase for what you can do.
Yeah.
And when I told them that, I said, I'm also looking for things that maybe could be either you could donate or discount so I could show it to people. So they ended up giving me a whole bunch of blocks for a lot less of a price. All right?
Before we wrap it up, if you want
Yes,
to take
sir.
1 minute, you can look at the close-up camera right there. Let the audience know if there's any initiatives that you want to promote, where they could
Oh,
donate,
thank
anything
you.
that's important to you.
So professional. Yeah, well, I will tell you this. From my firehouse, we had a foundation that was set up for people for after 9/11, people who were helping doing the rescue and recovery. They got ill. And now it turns out that the toll is larger than the people we lost at 9/11. We lost 343. We'll already have double that of how many people have lost from illnesses that are definitely related to 9/11, including cancer and also lung damage. So the organization that I support right now is called Ray Pfeiffer Foundation.org. You look that up there and you'll be able to donate funds directly to them, and you will be helping out the families that have them and also the people that are suffering right now. It could be transportation at times, it could be doctor visits, it could be medication, but your donation will help them out.
All right. We're going to list all of that information down in the description below. Please check it out. Allegory and Silk is also going to be a donor Okay, we're gonna donate some money to that campaign, so you can check that in the description. As our thank you to you.
Thank you.
For coming on the podcast.
Handshake.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. We have some really exciting guests coming on, even in the coming weeks. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much for coming on. My grandpa was a firefighter too, so.
Oh, you should have mentioned that. What was it?